Hi guys, I want to show you how to make this cute, simple little like bracelet that you can have a key hook, a key ring on, so you can put your keys on it, or maybe even charms if you want to do this for a younger person. I have a 7-inch around wrist, so as you can see it has a little give, so when you see how I do it, you can easily adjust with the loom I'm using how many pegs you want versus how tight you want it. This was done using pearl in the true knit stitch. That's why it looks a little different, and it does have a little more give because it is a rib stitch. If I did it all in knit, it would definitely be a little tighter, so keep that in mind. This is just to give you an idea. I would love to see if you guys take this idea and what you do with it. Do you do the same stitches? Do you try different ones? But the idea is just to I'm going to show you how to attach this on there, and that way if you're doing a craft show, I thought this would be a good idea. You'd be able to put your key for your like lockbox on there, on your wrist, wearing something that's loom knitted if you're selling loom knitted items, and then it's kind of like you don't have to worry about lugging out your keychain with all your keys, or leaving your key to your lockbox too nearby if somebody goes around it, or even just using if you want to go for a walk and you decide, hey, I want to just bring my house key, that's all I need. You can just do that and just wear it on your wrist. It won't fall off. But I thought this was a cute little project, so let me show you how I did it. Obviously we want our yarn. I already spun this into a yarn cake. It is called newspaper stripe. Let's see if I can get this right. Newspaper stripe. It is by Red Heart. It's Super Saver Stripes, and it says it has 236 yards for the skein, and it's a weight of 5 ounces, and I believe it's a weight of 4. So it's right there, it tells us a weight of 4. So pretty much traditional everyday yarn that you tend to use. And as you can see, it's got the black, the white, and the grays kind of through it. So I thought that'd be great for this little keychain project, because it's kind of like a neutral color. But you can need like your normal little basic key ring that you can probably get like at Walmart, or maybe, you know, any craft store. It's just a normal one that your keys come on. If you want to, you could always add 2 and have one that's going to be attached like you saw in the beginning, and then another one that could be the one that like has the keys on it if you want it further away. So let's get started on how we're going to do this. Also your row counter if you need one. Obviously I'm using my looming hook. I do like this one. I've been using it the last few projects you probably have seen obviously in the videos. It's not too bad. I still use my Sheffield brand picks sometimes, but I've been using this one a little more just to see. And of course obviously scissors, possibly a crochet hook if you need it. And I'm using the Sock Loom 2 from Authentic Knitting Board. It works really well to kind of be able to do one strand of yarn at a time. So we're going to use this loom, and I'm going to quickly just set it up for the amount of pegs that I want to use. Okay, so we have our Sock Loom 2 set to 30 pegs in the round, and we're going to now do the part that's going to attach this. That's what we're going to work on first, is attaching this. So all I'm going to do is on this side that I'm considering my starting side, is I'm just going to go ahead and wrap a few pegs. So I'm going to go ahead and do my slip knot. And with a crochet hook later I can hide whatever amount of tail I have left. So I'm just going to look at this side, because we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pegs. It doesn't really matter where we're going to lock this in kind of thing, but we're going to do it. I'm going to do 5 pegs on this side. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to E-wrap back to cast it on. Knit it over. Okay, now what we're going to do, because we have our cast on row done, is we're going to go ahead, and we want to get our stitch marker handy too, because you may choose to do more rows than I do. And then what I'm going to do now is work back and forth here until I get enough on this side that I can use to attach this. And we don't want a lot of yarn through there. We just want to make like creating a way to connect it to these pegs over here. I'm not explaining it right, but you'll see what I mean in a second here. Okay, so I'm going to do, and I want to lower this down a little more for you guys. I'm going to do what's called the true knit, or the classic knit. I don't use this one that often, but I think for this project it's a good choice. And all this means is, instead of laying, like E-wrapping it around like we normally do, like this way how we E-wrap it, we're going to actually just lay it in front of the pegs. But it reminds me of doing a pearl. So if you've done a pearl, you kind of know what you're doing here. But this is also pretty cool because it's a little different. Excuse me. Let's see if I can get this to focus right here. Okay, it gives it a little different look. It's going to make it a little tighter than doing like the E-wrap knit. So when you have your yarn above, Now with purling, we usually have the yarn below it, right? But we're not doing that with this one. We want the yarn above, because what we're going to do is go through the bottom loop, okay, come up and grab the working yarn, turn your hook until you create a loop. And then you're going to take this loop, you're going to remove the yarn that's on the, like you're going to lift off the loop, just like when we do purl, and place it back on the peg. So you go to the next one, and we're doing the same thing. We're going to go through the bottom, okay, I'm going to see my working yarn, turn my loom hook to grab it, so I can create a loop down here that I can then take off and put back on the peg. Okay, and I'm going to do the next one the same way. So again, we're going through the bottom loop, if I can get the yarn to cooperate, through the bottom loop, okay, grab the working yarn that's up there, turn it so you can create a loop by bringing it back down through, and then take this whole thing off so you can place the new loop onto the peg. Okay, and then we're going to go to the next one. And this is the last one we're doing in this row. Now because this is only where we're attaching the hook, or the ring, it doesn't need to have the garter stitch to be flat or anything like that. We're just going to keep working that. And that I'm going to click and say, okay, I've done one row. So I'm going to continue doing this true knit, classic knit stitch until I get a loop on this side that I will then wrap around this peg, or this wreath ring. Or not wreath ring, sorry, keychain ring. So I'm going to go ahead and go off camera and keep doing the true knit for this many rows, and then I'll show you what to do for the next part. After doing the 10 true knit rows, just to show you on here, we're now going to attach this so that it'll be permanently on here. We're going to take these beginning loops, I'm trying to get close here, these beginning loops, and we're placing this, and we're bringing those loops through, so we're just dropping our little ring on it. You can see I just dropped it on there. Now I'm bringing these over to the nearest pegs. And it's not going to go over all 5 pegs, it might only go over 3. And you're just going to look for those beginning loops, some of them that you see, and you're just going to lay that on top of these pegs. This again we can work on hiding it in a little bit, but now we just place new loops onto here, and we're just going to quickly knit them over. So again, we took the old loops off of here. Let me just show you one more time. I take this off. We just looked at the starting cast on row that we did. Okay, we just did our starting cast on, found our loops, and just placed them back on pegs. And you could try doing all 5 if you want. You could do 3. It's not going to really hurt it whichever way you do it. Once you get some on there, go ahead on the pegs that have it. So again, I have it on these 3. Go ahead and knit those over to lock that into the project. Okay, so now what that does is it locks this loop, okay, it locks this loop into place. Now we need to work the whole thing. Let me go back out again here. Now we need to work around the whole thing. And this is where, if you want to, you could take your straggler that's now up at the top and grab it as you go around, and we're going to do the E-wrap cast on going all the way around. So we're going to do what we did at the beginning for these rows, or these pegs, and now grab all of them and work our way around until we get back to, which this is kind of like your starting peg. So I'm just going to E-wrap it all the way around. Okay, and our last peg that's not wrapped right there. Okay, so now we're just going to lock these in place that have 2. And now we gotta go back around to keep doing our E-wrap cast on. Okay, so now to do this, I'm going to go rewrap all these, and I'm just going to do my E-wrap cast on. And again, I'm going to work like a few pegs at a time. Remember, projects do not have to be perfect. I think a lot of people put so much emphasis on projects being 100% perfect. I say you just try to have some fun with it, and we always learn from our mistakes and just from the creative process itself. Other side is always the one that's a little more tricky to do, but just kind of take your time. It doesn't have to, you don't have to worry about going too fast. Take your time on the inner pegs, because I know that those are the ones that are usually a little more tricky to do. And a lot of it's just getting the right angle for you to be able to make sure you can knit them over okay. Okay, so I've just got a couple more, because again, keep in mind our starting peg is kind of this one. I'm going to push those down, and just till we get... Actually, I don't need to do that for that. I forgot. We're not going to go to this peg. I forgot for the part of this I'm going to do differently. Okay, so on this side we got 3 pegs before we start with this. We got that. We're going to actually do... I forgot. I was going to do the rib stitch, which is basically where you purl a peg, knit a peg, purl a peg, knit a peg. So when we knit, we're going to do the true knit like we did over here, and then we're going to purl. So basically it's going to change up whether our yarn is in front, or excuse me, on top or on bottom. But what I'm going to quickly do is go ahead and put some stitch markers on, just because it's going to help me remember as I'm going. So I'm going to put the stitch markers on every other peg, and then we'll know which ones I'm knitting, which ones I'm purling. So let me go ahead and do that, and we'll get on to the next part. Okay, I got all my stitch markers on. I may invest in different ones in the future. These are just ones I like because they're flexible and you can take them off easy because they just have these little, like they attach. Like I can show you, let me show you really quick. I've used these for years, but if you're new to my channel, you might not have seen me use these. These are just ones I got years ago from a store called Joann Fabrics, I believe. I don't even know if they make this kind anymore, but they kind of latch together. That's what I kind of like about them, is their flexibility. And I just have different colors. There's not really any different side or like that. So now what we're going to do is deciding which pegs we're going to knit, which ones we're going to purl. And again, the knit is going to be done in the true knit, and the purl is, if you're familiar with the purl, I'll be showing that in a minute anyway if you're not. But what we're going to do is we're going to do the purl on these, on the ones with the stitch markers, and knit on the ones not. I feel like because of the stitch marker being there, the purl might be the easier one to do with a stitch marker kind of in the way. If you're able to remember purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, then you're fine. You don't need stitch markers. But because I know I can get forgetful, the stitch markers allow me to see what I'm supposed to do next and remind myself, this is purl, this is knit, this is purl, this is knit, and go around. So again, for those that don't remember what a purl is, the purl is the one that goes underneath the loop that's already on there. So for purling, we're going to go through the top of the loop, okay, move our working yarn over, turn around our working yarn, pull it up so we have our loop. And then again, just like with the true knit, we're going to take that off and put it back on the peg. Now we're at one that doesn't have a stitch marker, so we're going to do the true knit. So that means our yarn has to be on top of the peg. Let me zoom out here a little bit. Our yarn has to be on top of the loop that's already on there. And we work our way, as you remember, through the bottom of the loop. Let me move that out of the way here. The bottom of the loop, catch our working yarn, okay, twist it, bring it down the bottom way, and then take that off and place it back on. So again, because we're purling here, the yarn goes below it. So we go through the top of it, bring our working yarn over, turn it, come up for the loop. Come up for the loop, take it off, place that loop on. And the knit is on top of it. Okay, so because it's on top of it, we're going to, on top of the loop, come through the loop at the bottom up to the top, grab our working yarn, turn, create our loop, and put it back on the peg. Take our loop off, put it back on the peg. And that is all we're going to do, working our way around. Again, so we did a knit here, we're going to be doing a purl here. So I'll have my working yarn in front. So I'm not going to show you guys going all the way around because I feel like it'll be done. So I'm going to work off camera, and I'm going to keep following this pattern all the way around my loom. Keep going and keep going until I hit this many rows before we do the next step. Okay, so again, remember your pattern, and again, how many rows we have to do, and that's what you're going to do, and then when we come back, we'll do the next step. Okay, after doing our 8 rows of doing the alternating of purling and knitting, we're going to go ahead and just take this right off the loom. Sometimes I like to do an E-wrap row knit, but I'm not going to do that this time. I'm just going to do like the easier crochet bind off that I've talked about before. And of course, as we're doing it, we can take the stitch markers off as we go. So I'm going to get my little container of them ready so that I can pop them in there as we're working. Okay. So that will be ready for me to put them in. So when we do the, what I call the easier crochet bind off, we're going to go ahead, I'm going to take my watch off. I noticed the last time the watch was making some noise, so I'm going to take my watch off so we don't get the added noise of it hitting against the table for you guys. When we do the easier crochet bind off, because when you get to this point, it should look like this. Now, maybe I might have missed one, but this is what it's going to look like on the inside, roughly, and then this is how we got our the outside, which we'll see more when we take it off. And as you notice with this yarn, I didn't really get to a different color, which is totally fine. I think it'd be fun to make up, if I wanted to, a bunch of these and just see when I would hit different colors. Or I definitely have other projects in the works for this particular yarn, which will show off the different colors a little more. So when we do the crochet bind off, we're going to wrap a peg. Okay, we're going to knit it over, just a regular like E-wrap knit. We're going to wrap it one more time. So I'm basically putting 2 chains in between just to give us a little leeway. So then I'm going to wrap it again. I'm going to knit it over again. And then I'm going to move it, the loop from this peg to this peg. And as I move it, I can tighten the string up behind it. I can take the stitch marker that's now available off and toss it off, and then I'm going to knit this over. I'm going to do the same thing I just did again, which is where I'm going to wrap the peg, just an E-wrap knit, knit it over, wrap it again, knit over, then move it over. There's no stitch marker there, so I don't have to pull it off. Give it a little tightness. Now keep in mind too, we'll later be connecting the end one to the beginning one, so it may look weird right now. Again, same thing, knit over, E-wrap it once, knit over, E-wrap it twice, knit over, and move over. Remove your stitch marker if you want to at that point. So I'm going to continue this process all the way around until I get to my last peg. So continue doing that, and I'll meet you when we get closer to the end. Okay, this is for the part that my camera didn't record, so I did a swatch up. So this is not the project that we were doing before. Just a quick reference, this is the project when it's completely done, but I needed to insert this video because again, my camera did not record this part and I wanted to make sure you guys knew how to do it. So as I said in the last clip, we needed to work our way casting this off until we got to our last loop. So as you see, I got one last loop on here, and all I'm going to do, if I can zoom in here a little bit, is I just got to go this one to that. So when you're casting off and you get to your last loop that goes over, you're going to move it over, go ahead and knit this over, Okay, and now the part that I didn't show was taking that loop off and putting it on your crochet hook. So I'm just going to lift it off with my looming tool, okay, and then I'm going to put it on my crochet hook. So that's the part that didn't show, is I put it on there. Now what I need to do, and again, the colors in this is a little different than the other one. That's the original project. Again, I've got the original project sitting over here. So what I need to show you guys was how I connected them. So we need to connect our last stitch to our beginning stitch. So I created one loop. I did one little crochet hook through, one chain through, I should say. Now what I need to do is go to the beginning. As you see, we have our beginning spot, and I just put the crochet hook into one of the stitches from the first stitch we did. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you're going to grab one of those, and then you're going to take the back loop over the top. And that kind of locks that in place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my working yarn, okay, and then I'm going to bring it all the way through, okay, to kind of block it into the project, as you can see. And then I'm going to go down a little bit, and I'm going to put my crochet hook through one of the bottom stitches. I'm going to pull my yarn through, but not quite all the way. Let me try that again because it's frayed. So I'm going to go into that loop. I'm going to grab my working yarn, pull it through, but I'm not going to pull it all the way through. I'm going to use that to tie. So now I'm going to tie these two parts together, just to kind of lock it into the project. Okay, it's just going to lock it into there. Tight little knot. You can just choose to do it twice, like I sometimes mention in other videos, to lock it in, and then you can cut your stragglers. Now this part will probably be said again on the other clip, but this is what you missed because my camera didn't do that. If you don't want to have that loose of a tail, you can make them a little longer and continue to hide them into the project. Now let's go back to the original project. You can trim the tails and hide the tails in if you want. So that's all I'm doing, is I'm trimming them. It'll kind of be hidden on the inside. And now we have our little key ring bracelet. So if I would put it on my wrist is a size around 7 inches around. So this actually works fairly well and gives me some leeway. If I wanted to, I could easily decrease the amount of pegs if I wanted a tighter on there. But again, I can put my key on there, and I have my own little, excuse me, if I can get bags out there. It doesn't look too bad. It's like a cute little thing, and even with the crochet thing, you could turn around and add little charms if you wanted, but it just gives you a different way to kind of wear your keys. If you're going for a walk and you don't want to bring all your keys, you just need your house key or something, you could put it on there. If you do a craft show, then you could also hide those stragglers in as well with the crochet hook. If you're doing a craft show, you might just be able to put the lock key to your lockbox on this, and that way just have it on your wrist versus having all your keys out. Or you can turn around, if you don't want to put any keys on it, you could put some charms on it and make it like a charm bracelet and even attach some around. But I thought this was a good, quick project to do. Like I said, I'm stretching it out. Because of doing the rib stitch, it gives it some stretch. If we had did just the knit stitch all the way around, it would have been tighter overall. So just keep that in mind. And again, I hope you like it. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of future videos. I have plenty in the works coming up, and I'll see you in the next one.